Welcome everybody, my name is Sam Schmidt and I'm the yoga leader at Sanjana Fitness. Thank you so much for visiting our page today. I encourage you to like this video, check out our other videos, and subscribe to our channel if you get something that you need out of this flow. Today's beginner Hatha yoga flow will be a general full body flow, but it's going to be broken down into 5 subsections that focus on different parts of the body, so that you can rewatch those small clips or those small sequences to get what you need, focus on what you need in your practice. So feel free to stop the video, pause and rewatch certain parts if you need to, if it feels good, or if it's helpful. When you're ready to begin, we will start on our backs in Supta Baddha Konasana, or bound angle pose. I'll meet you there. Okay, so we're dropping in Supta Baddha Konasana, which is the reclined bound angle pose or reclined butterfly pose. Soles of the feet together. You can rest your hands anywhere on the body that feels comfortable, or just open up the palms toward the ceiling. Let the knees fall apart. Start to feel the connection to the mat. You can put a pillow under your head or neck if you want to. And this is where we will drop in. So just start connecting with the breath, quieting the mind, checking in with the body, beginning to observe. Remind your body that it's okay to relax. This practice is your own, so I encourage you to adapt it to your body's needs. Be curious in your practice. And just be present in the body. Checking in and taking inventory of how you feel in the physical body, the intellectual body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. Just beginning to notice. Take this time to deepen the breath. Today's practice will be a general full body flow broken down into 5 sections that focus on different parts of the body. So when we're coming up with a mantra or a theme for today's practice, we might relate that to the way that we can approach any obstacle, step by step, piece by piece, breath by breath. So just thinking about your challenges and how to break them down into smaller, more manageable challenges, how to begin. Building resiliency, and also just living with ease. So you might have a mantra like, I take each challenge step by step and breath by breath. As we start to incorporate movement, we're going to first focus on the hips. We're already in a hip opening pose right now, so we're already beginning. From this pose, we're going to bring our palms to the outside edges of the thighs and just use the fingertips to press the knees back together, bringing the soles of the feet to the mat about hip width apart. You can move the pillow if you're using one, and we're going to check in with our usual hip opening asanas and sequences. So we can start by crossing that left ankle over the right knee. And just kind of pulling that left knee open toward the floor. You can keep your hands on the body or open toward the ceiling. Checking in with that external rotation in the left hip. You can gently press the fingertips into that inner left thigh. Just not forcing, but checking in with your range. And then when you're ready, you might kick that right heel up off the mat to interlace the fingertips behind that right thigh with your left elbow on the inside edge of the left thigh. You can just kind of gently bend into the elbows and pull that right knee toward the face, not forcing, just noticing. You can also extend through that right knee to send the heel toward the ceiling. Just also lengthening through the hamstrings on the right side. And if you're ready for a little more, you can keep that right knee bent and interlace the fingers in front of the right shin, keeping the head and the shoulders on the mat. And same thing here, maybe you'll pull the right knee in toward the face, or maybe just rock gently side to side. Remember, it's your practice. Be curious, explore, listen to your body, take what it needs. Connect with the breath, be present in what you're feeling, and maybe let something go on your exhale. When you're ready to switch sides, do so mindfully, just releasing that right heel to the mat, unraveling the legs. Maybe letting the knees fall left to right before you switch sides. And then we'll extend through that right knee, cross that right ankle over the left knee. And once again, just start pressing that right knee open and toward the floor without using your hands. Not forcing, just noticing without judgment. Feel free to move through that sequence of asana modifications at your own pace, beginning by putting the right fingertips on the right thigh and just gently pressing. Remember, it's normal if one side is very different from the other. That's definitely my case in the hips, so just honor where your body is. You might spend a little time in each variation just moving through, just to observe what you feel in different poses or different versions of the same pose. Remember to meet your body where it is. Be curious, to explore, to receive the messages that your body's sending you through those physical sensations. And going to try to quiet the mind while you're doing so. So if you're having trouble with that, just come back to the breath. Make sure you can breathe deep in whatever pose you're in. If you can't, you should back out and come to a simpler version or a more accessible version of that pose. Take your time here. Stay present in the sensations of the body. And when you're ready to release, do so mindfully, bringing the left foot down to the mat, unraveling the legs, bringing the sole of the right foot down to the mat, maybe letting the knees fall left to right if your body's asking you for that. And then we're going to roll up to sitting for a 90-90, which is not a yoga pose, but still good for the hips. So roll up however you get there. And we'll come into that 90-90 by leaving that left shin in front, parallel to the top edge of the mat. Bringing that right thigh in line with the hip and opening both knees to 90 degrees. So just stay here in that seated position. Your both knees should be open to 90 degrees with your front shin parallel to the top edge of the mat and your right thigh also parallel to the top edge of your mat. So just find a nice long seated posture here, long through the spine. And then we can fold forward gently if you want to. Checking in once again with external rotation in that left hip, internal rotation in the right. And then we can rotate through to check in with the second side. Just by flipping those knees, rolling to the back edge of your mat, checking out your leg alignment once again. This time your legs should be parallel to the back edge of the mat, knees open to 90 degrees. Find that nice strong seated posture first. Notice what you feel. And then maybe fold forward a bit, just checking in, not bouncing. Moving mindfully with your mind's eye where you feel those sensations. Take your time here. Feel free to go back through to that first side if you need to. And when you're ready, we'll transition into an extended child's pose. And we'll start checking in with the side body and spine here. So coming to all fours and then bringing your knees wide, bringing the big toes into touch. You can send the hips back toward the heels, walk the hands forward to bring the chest and forehead down to the mat. You might start to notice that many of these asanas have multiple functions in terms of the muscle groups that they target. So we're going to check in with the side body here, but if you notice, this transition pose is still connecting to the hips too. So just notice and observe what you feel and where. And we'll check in with the side body by bringing our awareness to the fingertips, lifting the head, the neck, the shoulders, and then walking the fingers over to the left and folding down over that left knee or near it, just checking in at the edge of your range of motion, whatever that looks like. Maybe walking those right fingertips a little bit further and breathing all the way down into that right hip. Enjoy some nice full inhales. And maybe let something go on your exhale. Bring our awareness back to the fingertips. Maybe bat the eyes open if they're closed. Lift the head and neck when you're ready. We'll walk to the second side. Again, moving mindfully. Checking in with the left side body this time, bringing forehead and chest down toward the earth. Maybe walking those left fingertips a little bit further. Pulling that left hip down toward the left heel, connecting with the breath. Noticing what you feel and where. Bring your awareness back to the fingertips when you're ready, lifting the head and neck. Slowly walk back through center, and then walk your hands toward your body. We're going to come up to sit on our heels. We won't be here long. If this position is very uncomfortable for you, you can also find a comfortable cross-legged seat. And we're just going to do some twists here. So bringing that left hand around behind you, planting the fingertips on the mat, and then bringing that right hand to the outside edge of the left knee. We'll sit up, lift, and twist. Reconnecting with the breath. Maybe looking over your left shoulder, if that's in your range today. Releasing toxins and stored energy from the spine. Take another cycle of breath if it feels good. And on your exhale, we'll come back through center to do the same thing on the second side. Bringing the right fingertips behind you, planting them on the mat, pulling that right shoulder back. And then bringing the left hand to the outside edge of the right thigh. Getting long through the spine, pulling that right shoulder open. Maybe looking back over your right shoulder. Staying connected with the breath. Take a couple more deep inhales. And let something go on your exhale. Come back through center on your next exhale or when you're ready. And we're going to come forward onto all fours for some cat-cow and cat-cow variations as we do. Checking in with the spine. So palms under the shoulders, knees under the hips, tops of the feet are on the mat, lift the gaze. On your inhale, drop the belly, tilt the pelvis, roll the shoulders back. Exhale, press into the lower palms, low ribs come inward toward the spine, stretching through the upper back, pressing into the knees, sync up with your breath, and move at your own pace. Notice what you feel as you move. Stay present in those sensations. Observe. And feel free to bend into the elbows and move organically through the spine, however your body is asking you to. Pressing into all sides.
stretching through the side body. You can imagine you're on the inside of a barrel or a tube, and you're touching all the sides of that barrel or tube with your body. When you feel satisfied with that, we're going to come into our first cobra of the day. So you can just walk your hands forward, extend through the hips, bring them down to the mat. Palms press into the mat, extend through the elbows, press up. And if this is way too intense on the low back, bend into the elbows, lower it down a little bit. Meet your body where it is. And then we're going to come into a puppy pose. So bend into the elbows before pressing back up to all fours. And from the all fours position, we'll walk the hands forward, rotate the hands slightly outward or away from each other, and bring the chest and the forehead or the chin down to the mat. You can make this pose as active or as passive as you want to. If it feels great on the low back, just stay here in this passive version. If it doesn't feel so great, you can engage your lower abdominals, roll up onto the forehead a little bit higher, and then just press the armpit chest down toward the mat. Kind of shift the focus there to the upper back instead. Take a few deep cycles of breath here. Notice any other places in the body that you feel this pose might also be targeting. And when you're ready to come out, pull the elbows in toward the body, coming onto the forearms and then pressing up for all fours. And from here, we're going to move into the core and low back section of this bigger sequence. So we're going to come into our first plank of the day. Palms are under the shoulders, extending fully through the hips and the knees, lowering the hips toward the mat, creating one nice long line from the crown of your head to the tip of your tail. We're just going to hold there for a second, building strength in the core and low back. And then we're going to slowly bend into the elbows, lower all the way to the mat as slowly as we can. Pressing up for cobra, extending through the elbows, bending into the elbows, melting it back down. We'll press up for downward dog. Hips come toward the ceiling, heels come toward the mat. And then we'll extend, walk the hands forward. Come back into that plank pose. Hold for just a second here, building strength. Let's slowly lower once again, pressing up into cobra, coming onto the tops of the feet, maybe extending a little further through the elbows this time, and then melting it back down to the belly. From here, let's extend through the elbows, open up the palms toward the ceiling so your hands are kind of behind you or in line with the hips. And we're going to come into locust pose again. So we're going to create some pressure inside the abdomen to lift the knees and the chest from the mat, as well as the hands. And hold that pressure. Notice what you feel in the low back. You should be able to breathe. If you can't breathe, lower a little bit more toward the mat. Otherwise, we're squeezing and lifting, checking in with the low back, posterior chain. Noticing what you feel and where, building strength. Let's release the hands to back under the shoulders. And we'll vinyasa. So press up, back into your downward dog. Heels toward the mat, palms rotating slightly outward, hips toward the ceiling. Come back into that plank, that core strength builder. One more time. Hold there. Slowly lower to cobra when you're ready. Pressing up. And then melting back down to the belly. We'll check in with the back one more time. Bending into both knees. We're going to bring our hands to the outside edges of each foot. So left hand grabs left foot, right hand grabs right foot. Once again, we're going to create that intra-abdominal pressure by flexing or, trying to flex your abdomen basically. Create that pressure to protect your guts. And then press the feet up toward the ceiling, opposing the hands. Pull your feet toward you, push your feet away from you. Create that pressure through the abdominal wall. And release when you're ready. You can extend through those knees, recenter yourself on the mat if you need to. We're gonna meet in just a Sphinx pose. So legs are out nice and long, coming onto the tops of the feet, pressing into the hips and the pubic bone. Resting on the forearms, nice and open toward the chest, fingertips radiating forward. Check in with the breath here. Take a moment, feel good about what you did in that last section for core strength and low back. And from here, we're going to move on to chest and shoulders. So this little series of asanas will be focused on those mostly, but notice what you feel elsewhere in the body. Reconnect with your breath, your mantra. Let something go on your next exhale. Okay, when you're ready, we're going to come very briefly into a forearm plank. So you can curl the toes under here. You can press up for a full plank to start if you want to. We're going to come down onto the forearms and keep the palms as they were in Sphinx. So fingertips radiating forward, palms pressing into the mat. From here, we're going to walk the feet up toward the body, bending into the hips, sending the hips toward the ceiling for dolphin pose. Kind of like a variation between a forearm plank and downward dog. Kind of a forearm downward dog. Heels are toward the floor, but it's okay if they're not touching. It's more important that you have that flat back. Take a few deep breaths here. Notice what you feel and where. Just connect with that without getting overwhelmed. Maybe you can walk the feet a little bit closer if you like the challenge. Not forcing anything, just checking in. Take 2 more deep cycles of breath here. And then slowly bend into the knees. Release the knees all the way to the mat. Take a second here and then we'll come into Gomukhasana. So to do that, let's bring the right knee to the center of the mat, that midline. If there was an imaginary long line through the long edge of your mat. We're gonna lift the left knee by extending through the left knee. So left leg is fully extended, left knee is not touching the mat. Then I'm gonna swing my right foot over to the left side. From here, I'll bend into that left knee, drag it in behind the right, and then swing my left foot over to the right. And from here, we're coming into Gomukhasana or cow face pose in the lower body. So what I want to do is try to mimic that in the upper body by incorporating the Apley back scratch test. Same kind of bind here. If this bind is way too uncomfortable for you, you can do the shoulder and chest portion in just a comfortable cross-legged seat. So feel free to go ahead and go there. From here, we're going to bend into both elbows and bring the hands behind the back. We'll start with one elbow up toward the ceiling, one elbow down toward the floor, and see if you can reach your fingertips together to interlink them, to take that bind there. If you can't, that's no big deal. Just extend through the fingertips, reach toward opposite hands, pull the shoulders back, notice what you feel and where. And in personal training, this is part of what's called the Apley back scratch test, which helps measure flexibility and mobility in the shoulders. If you can't touch, then shoulders are something that you're going to want to work on and focus on in your regular yoga practice. Take a few deep breaths here. Take this time just to turn inward. Gently release the fingertips when you're ready. Come out of that slowly in the upper body. Just checking in. Don't move too quickly. We're going to come out of Gomukhasana to switch sides and do the same thing on the second side. If you're in a cross-legged seat, just switch whichever shin is in front right now. Coming out of Gomukhasana, we'll come into all fours position, tabletop. Get back into it on the other side. We'll bring that left knee into the midline of the mat. Left knee, left shin, midline. We're going to extend through the right knee. So right leg is fully extended. And we are going to slide that right foot over to the left. Drop the left knee there. Okay, so now move your right foot toward the left, your left foot toward the right, creating that space for yourself to walk the hands back toward the body. Coming into Gomukhasana on the second side. So for the shoulders and chest, we're going to do the opposite Apley back scratch or that opposite bind. Bending into both elbows, bringing both hands behind the back. This time we'll do right elbow toward the ceiling, left elbow toward the floor, or the opposite of whatever you did on the first side. And same thing here, just checking in, noticing what you feel. Noticing if one side is very different from the other. If so, that's totally okay and normal. Just incorporating what you learn here into your regular yoga practice. Take a few cycles of breath just to turn inward and remember your mantra. Not forcing anything. You are in control of your practice. Go ahead and release that when you're ready. Gently unravel, coming forward onto all fours or unraveling however you do organically, just slowly with control. We're going to come onto our hips and extend through the legs, through the knees. Coming into the cool down portion of our 5-chapter flow today.
with a little seated forward fold. So when you get there, legs out long in front, toes pointed toward the ceiling. Let's get nice and long through the spine, open through the chest. Maybe sending the fingertips up toward the ceiling, really reaching, taking up space. And then hinging at the hips to send the hands beyond the feet, or maybe just imagine that. Melting down somewhere over the knees, honoring the body wherever it is today. And if you want to make this nice and passive, just open up the palms toward the ceiling on the outside edge of each shin. It's okay to hold your feet if you want to. Just make sure you're not forcing any shape. This is our time to cool down. So take this time just to enjoy the sensations of the body, to absorb the nutrients of your practice, to reflect on your mantra or where you are in your practice, and just to enjoy these last few quiet moments for yourself, created by yourself. We're going to spend several more breaths here. So if this is too intense on your low back, you can bend into the knees, bring the soles of the feet to the mat. Just bring your arms to clasp underneath the knees and relax the head and neck. Take your time in this pose, spend as much time here as you'd like. And when you're ready to come out, plant the sits bones to slowly curl up. Articulating through the spine. Opening up through the chest, rolling the shoulders back. We're going to come onto our backs for the rest of this cool down, so feel free to get there however you want. And when you get there, we're going to continue just bringing the knees toward the chest, maybe one at a time or both. And then wrapping the arms around them, just tucking them in. Maybe rock gently side to side, relaxing through the hip flexors. Stay here as long as you'd like. And we're going to transition into a supine twist by sending the arms out left to right, palms downward, keeping the knees raised. And then with the feet, knees, and hips together, we're just going to let them fall over to the left. Keeping that right shoulder pinned to the mat, keeping the hips, knees, and ankles stacked. You might rest that left hand on the top of your stacked knees or the outside edge of the right thigh. And to get into those supporting muscles in the lumbar region of the spine, you might, keeping your right shoulder and the back of your right hand on the floor or mat, send your hand up overhead like you're raising your hand in class. So your shoulder and the back of your right hand stay in contact with the floor, but it looks like you're raising your hand in class if you were seated. Slide that right palm back down in line with the shoulder when you're ready. You can also send the left palm out to the left. Press into your palms to lift the knees back through center and rotate that stack over to the right, adjusting as needed, bringing that left shoulder down to the mat or to the floor. Maybe resting the right hand on the outside edge of the left thigh. And then keeping that left shoulder, the back of the left hand in contact with the floor. Sliding that left hand up and overhead like you're raising your hand in class. Check in here, notice what you feel and where. Reconnect with the breath if you've lost it. Enjoy these last few quiet moments in this space that you've created for yourself on the mat. When you're ready, when you feel fulfilled, when you feel you've had enough in this pose, slide that left hand back down in line with the left shoulder. We'll make the T shape with our arms, palms downward. Press into the palms to bring the stack back through center, soles of the feet on the mat. Readjust if you need to. And then we are going to end in the pose that we began in, so you can bring the soles of the feet together and let the knees fall apart toward the mat. Coming back into that reclined bound angle pose, Supta Baddha Konasana. Let the hands rest gently on the body or open them up left to right, whatever feels right. Reconnect with the breath if you've lost it. And stay here to close the practice or extend through the knees for a corpse pose, Shavasana. Opening up the palms left to right. wherever you are, I encourage you to take a few more minutes of quiet meditation. Just noticing, just observing, and letting your thoughts drift away like clouds in the sky. Noticing but not being attached to them. Notice the quality and fullness of your breath. Notice if anything feels different in the body or mind than it did when we started. Reflect on your mantra, if you had one. Take this time to envision what it would be like to incorporate that mantra into your everyday words, thoughts, and actions. I'm going to bring my palms together to rest gently at the third eye or on the forehead. Feel free to join me if it feels right, or stay where you are while we close the practice. I first want to do a land acknowledgement, recognizing that we are on unceded Monongahela, Osage, and Erie lands, or I am at least. So we recognize and honor that Indigenous heritage and the sacrifices, past and present, that Indigenous peoples make. We recognize that their liberation is tied to ours and that there are lots of opportunities to support that today. I encourage you to find out whose lands you are practicing from and how you can support their efforts toward liberation. We also want to recognize that yoga is an ancient spiritual practice stemming from the subcontinent of India, so we also respect and honor that cultural heritage. Yoga also functions as many things to many different peoples of the world, including a community. Thank you so much for being part of my community today. I hope you got something you needed here today, and I hope to see you again soon. Namaste.